znanost in tehnološko nezavedno. Nocoj gostimo priznanega profesorja, gospoda Piera Luigija Capuccija iz Mednarodne akademije za oblikovanje in umetnost iz Milana, iz Italije. Predavanje bo potekalo v angleškem jeziku. Na željo gospoda Piera bi bilo dobrodošlo, da se v okviru predavanja razvije tudi debata, torej kako si pripravite vprašanja. So, I would like to welcome you to tonight's event in the frame of a soft control project produced by Kibla, Art, Science and Technologically Unconscious. Tonight we are hosting Mr. Pier Luigi Capucci from the International Academy for Design and Arts from Milan, Italy. The title of tonight's lecture is Towards Third Life. Torej, naslov nocojšnjega predavanja je Naproti tretjemu življenju. The lecture will be held in English, and Pierre, now I'm giving the mic and the stage to you, and please start with your lecture. And welcome to you. Pier Luigi Capucci.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for to Kibla for inviting me, and to Dmitry for inviting me. I discussed about the topic of the exhibition. It is a beautiful exhibition. I could see only one part that is in Maribor. That is very interesting. Tomorrow I will have the chance to see the next part, the other part. Well, I will read my lecture because I speak in a language which is not mine, and so to be sure of my words, I will read my introduction. The exhibition and what we can see, and also what you heard during the conference last week, are growing and rotating around life. Life is one of the main concepts. And it is a concept very difficult because we are not able to define exactly what life is. And so I think that the technological unconscious, that is the topic of the exhibition and events, has a lot to do with life. And all living creatures communicate in many ways. They use the body and the senses in order to notify that they are enraged, hungry, or ready for mating. Some species have a social life with a continuous balance between the individual communication and the dynamics of the group. Some ant colonies, for instance, form societies that can count millions of members and have complex social behaviors like traffic management, public health efforts, agriculture, and war. War that is reasonably similar to human wars as to tactic options, way to attack, and strategic decisions. Besides similarities, there are the peculiarities. Humans have the symbolic ability, a very complex way to communicate through words, writings, images, sounds, both in direct and in mediated ways, synchronously and asynchronously, presently and remotely. But for a more general viewpoint, the symbolic ability is far more than a tool for communicating. It is a very powerful technology, probably the main reason behind the evolution of the human species, the horizon that humans are staring at, as well as the cage they are living in. This acquisition is as the basis of the peculiar human attitude to invent technologies and create instruments, tools, machines, and even new future life forms. When the symbolic ability was born, this is mostly considered an inappropriate question by the anthropologists, because before the use of images, it is only possible to refer to anatomic comparisons. What can be said is that since humans share the symbolic ability also in a minor part with primates like the chimpanzee, our common progenitor had basically in nature this ability. This means, very approximately estimating its root to 6 to 8 million years ago. How the symbolic ability developed, leading humans to contemporary technologies and cultures. So, let's imagine a very remote past before writings, images, and oral language, a world overwhelmed by natural events where very archaic pre-human individuals developed by chance the ability to use a small part of their body to point at the world around them. From this first ability, the indical science, lost in the obscurity of time's without memory, we cannot have dates for this event, our skill to mediate and share the world with symbols evolved. For our early ancestors, the conquest of symbols established a peculiar advantage in their environment. Before the use of clinical science, individuals could only share the world around them by directly showing objects and parts of the body, like many species of animals and humans too can do. But the communication based on the direct ostension has many limitations. The object of the communication must be of a size comparable with the body, physically reachable from the body, touchable and catchable by the body. It must not be dangerous for the individual. Consequently, with the direct ostension, our ancestors could not communicate, for instance, a mountain, the moon, and the sun, the top of the trees, and they could not express any abstract concepts. With indical science, our ancestors developed great advantages. In fact, the object communicated by indical science can be of any size, much bigger than the body, physically distant from the body, and it can be dangerous for the individual and the community. Indical science concerns a small part of the body. Indical science reduces the physical proximity with the world. With indical science, our ancestors begin to build up a symbolic distance from the physical world, a symbolic shelter. But indical science has many limitations. They require the presence of reality. The object must be physically there, at the end of the sign. The referent of the communication can only be physical. It must be present in the same place and at the same time for the individuals, times and space proximity. Abstract topics and invented objects cannot be communicated by indical science. Very approximately, the birth of oral language in the hominidae is usually set from 2 million to 400,000 years ago. About 50,000 years ago, at the end of the Middle Pleistocene, with the last Neanderthalians, oral language is able to communicate complex, concrete, and abstract information. With oral language that still involves a small part of the body, the symbolic communication gets another big jump. The object of the oral communication can be absent in remote and time space. The referent of the oral communication can be abstract or invented. It becomes possible to evoke, communicate, share and discuss abstract concepts and possible realities. Oral language becomes the realm of abstraction, of hypotheses, of symbolic sharing, of information storing and transmitting. Conflicts can be arranged inside the realm of oral language. It becomes possible to handle, transmit, expand and share ideas and knowledge, and to think about the world without touching or showing it. Communication becomes free from the material reference and presence of objects and reality. The oral language is the first laboratory where discussing and testing models of the world and experimenting their impact onto the physical world. The oral language gives birth to increasingly advanced projects that create artifacts of a growing complexity. Consciousness, self-awareness, interiority, imagination develop. Orality limits the physical proximity of humans to the world. Interposed between the individual and the phenomenal world, language builds up a symbolical world which is parallel to the physical one, widening the symbolic distance between the individual and the world. The ideas of future, present and past merge. Rites, mythologies and religions are born. Humans can project themselves into the future. But oral communication has many limitations. It requires the physical coexistence of the individual's space-time presence at the right distance for communicating. Without recording techniques, oral communication can only be retained in the memory of the individuals inside their body. It cannot rise to be a document. Knowledge cannot be exactly fixed and transmitted. Orality is based and lives on the local social dimension. When individuals die, knowledge dies as well. It is mainly with the Homo sapiens sapiens since its first appearance at the beginning of the late Pleistocene, about 45,000 years ago, that the figurative age begins, developing in the late Paleolithic. Images represent an important step in communication and knowledge. They can give a stable visual form in space and time to ideas, experiences and behavior. With images, knowledge is recorded outside the body and it becomes a document. Information and knowledge can be exactly fixed and transmitted and can survive to the individual's lifetime. With writing, about 5,000 years ago, history begins. With writing, information and knowledge are precisely codified and recorded outside the body in a stable form, in a process that involves a small part of the body too. Knowledge becomes easily transportable and verifiable. Information can travel through time and space and can be shared by many cultures beyond the original one that produced it. Knowledge can be easily and precisely managed, reproduced, recalled, discussed and elaborated. Actions can be transmitted and can take place remotely without the presence of the author of the document. With image and writing, codified knowledge is stored in documents outside the individual, outside the body. Image and writing increase the ability of controlling the present and of planning the future. The confrontation with the real world is more and more transferred into the symbolic dimension that becomes a laboratory where experimenting the connection with the complexity of the physical world. The symbolic dimension becomes a more and more autonomous, expanding and restructuring universe that often substitutes the physical one. The cultural distance between the individual and the physical world increases. The symbolic acquisition gave rise to the communication forms and tools that are the genius of our species. Orality, images, writing in all their declinations, until the contemporary mediascape. With symbols, models and projects, models and projects can be easily exchanged, can be quickly shared and adopted. For instance, in building a hood for the first time or making a more effective tool, it is possible to follow the vocal instructions, the pictures and the experience of somebody who already did it, instead of repeatedly trying and failing. It is possible to build a route or to improve a tool far quicker and in a much more effective way than doing it without any inputs in a long trial and error process. This is a typical human behavior. People always use some models to trust and refer to, or have somebody to ask for some advice before finalizing their decision in a complex world. Whenever the goal is buoyant computer, a book, deciding the school to attend to, the bank to trust in, the political party to vote, and in some cultures even the partner to marry, there is somebody to ask for, someone that, rightly or wrongly, is considered as an expert. In sociology, this advisor names the opinion leader, and his or her role is relevant in orienting the choices of the people. Further evidence for the close connection between the symbolic ability and the human sociality. With the symbolic ability, our ancestors achieved three main strictly correlated goals: knowledge, protection, and effectiveness. Knowledge in understanding the environment by transducing it into symbolic models that could be shared, exchanged, discussed, and improved. Protection from the environment pressure, thanks to the more and more effective tools, artifacts, and behaviors derived from more and more complex symbolic models. Effectiveness on the environment, thanks to the projects, tools, and artifacts built from the symbolic models that could modify the environment and contrast or distract its pressure. By means of the symbolic realm and with the tools that were produced, our ancestors began to know, control, and manage the environment, and at the same time they established some sort of safety distance from the physical world, creating a complex anthropic sphere made of knowledge, projects, tools, artifacts, devices, prostheses, machines. Along this line, humankind became able to hugely modify and, as you know, even degrade his environment. The symbolic acquisition opened up a whole world of opportunities, of habits. Through symbols, humans created a shared knowledge separated from the substance of the phenomenal world. They created a laboratory where, through the elaboration of symbolic models, it became possible to experiment hypotheses and simulate their impact on the world, originating a design capacity able to produce increasingly intricate artifacts. Symbols found abstraction, hypothesis, remote communication in space and time, consciousness, imagination, culture and knowledge, exchange and sharing. The realm of the past and the future are born from and described by symbols. Through symbols, information, experiences, and values are collected and transmitted. Symbols can mediate the conflicts among people, lowering them to some kind of linguistic intercourse. In the laboratory of symbols can take place experiments on the relations between humans and the phenomenal world, and the correlation with the world is increasingly transferred there. Through symbols, humans have boosted the speed of the cultural evolution in a process that allowed our ancestors to reduce the time of adaptation to the environment, limiting or shifting its pressure. Achievements that could have required many generations of individuals and hundreds, thousands, or even millions of years of evolution through natural selection could occur in only one generation by imitating, adopting, and sharing ideas, concepts, words, habits, in a process where a key role was probably played by the mirror neurons. The symbolic ability generated a huge acceleration in the human culture and in the process of creating more and more complex technologies, tools, and artifacts. There are many examples of this acceleration, from a remote past to the present. In the Stone Age, from the first simple splitters to the first axis, that are more refined, so they apparently are not so different. It is the upper image. There is a gap of 1 million years. 1 million years. 1 million years is a very difficult time frame to conceptualize. Most probably, in our ancestors' culture, the discoveries and inventions were very rare, and technologies and tools were very slowly developed and with fragile updates. Excluding the huge task of survival in a very hostile environment and the sudden and unusual presence of death, we would have probably been profoundly bored in a time where apparently nothing seems to happen. Instead, between the discovery of fire, it is the lower image, and today's many different ways of using fire-based energy, 400,000 years elapsed. A relevant acceleration also occurred inside the information and communication realms. For thousands of years until the invention of the telegraph, the speed of people, animals, things and information had approximately the same order of magnitude. The remote communication in real time was the dream of the governments, and even projects based on telepathy were funded. But in roughly 1 century and a half, a very short time if compared to the history of human culture, information experiencing an extraordinary acceleration. In fact, today people, animals and things can be carried at a very high speed, but information can reach the speed of light, namely more than 500,000 times quicker than people, animals and things, and with very economic transportation costs. How we calculated this difference is a simple proportion between the speed of human animals and things, the speed that can be taken at, and the speed of light. The information achieved this incredible acceleration because it got rid of the matter of the support, where it was codified and contained. In Latin, the support has the double function and meaning of containing and presenting the information, containing and presenting together. In a letter, the paper sheet contains, and in a paper letter, contains and in the meantime presents information. And these two functions are inseparable, so that it is impossible to deliver the information contained in a letter without carrying also the support, the paper sheet. Instead, in the communication process, the modern and contemporary media do not involve one support, but two distinct and separate supports. One that contains the codified information, and one that presents it. In a movie, information is contained on the film sheet and is presented on the screen. In a computer, information is contained on the hard disk and is presented on a screen. In the web, information is coded and contains some remote storage supports, but it can be viewed onto a local screen, as well as onto other millions of screens. In this case, what we are seeing on the screen, it is contained in the hard disk of my computer, two supports. Hence, without the matter and the inertia of the material support to move, information can travel at roughly the speed of light from the support where it is codified and contained to many, sometimes millions supports that present it. This process requires the two kinds of supports, the support that contains and support that presents information, that the two supports are in some way connected and each other compatible through shared standards and protocols. And finally, of course, there must be some kind of energy to activate the information coding, decoding, and transferring. This acceleration continues today in the media realm too. In order to reach, like this graph shows us, in order to reach 50 million users in the USA, the radio required 38 years, the television 13 years, the cable services 10 years, and the internet 5 years. And remaining inside the internet-based communications worldwide, Facebook required less than 4 years to reach 50 million users, while Skype took roughly 2 years. Today, people are information producers, gatherers, modifiers, disseminators and sharers. Most of the knowledge about the world is achieved through the media, it is mediated. And remote communications, both synchronous and asynchronous, have a relevant role in this trend. People can instantly, inexpensively, and easily communicate in remote in real time. What for centuries has been the dream of the political, economical, and military power of governments, inventors, and magicians is here and cheap today. Indeed, the history of humanity could be considered as some kind of race to communicate more and more quicker through increasingly longer distances in more and more affordable and economic ways. The symbolic ability generated an extraordinary acceleration in the process of creating more and more complex and useful tools and artifacts. Today, speed is a very questionable and controversial word that reminds us of the environmental, ethical, as well as of sustainability and pollution-related issues. In 1997, in Amsterdam, I attended the famous event at the time named Doors of Perception, organized by the Netherlands Design Institute and directed by John Sackler. That edition was devoted to discussing the topic of speed, and when I returned home, I published an article in Domus magazine where I wrote that we need speed, as this word is generally defined, because we do not want to compete as users with nature, also generally intended, and because we want to foster the illusion of immortality. What we do require for speed is a concrete project. A note should be devoted to the so-called interactive communication, which is often depicted by the media as a new contemporary acquisition by means of the digital technologies. In the human communication, as well as in the communication of the living organisms, interactivity is the rule and not the exception, as the media would often claim, and it is not necessarily technology-based. Every living being continuously interacts with the environment where it lives in, and also after its death with the matter it is made of. Before the use of images, ornaments, and later writings, the human symbolic communication was mainly direct and interactive. From the first pictures and artistic objects roughly 40,000 years ago to the invention of writing 5,000 years ago, humans register for the first time their knowledge outside the body in forms that are not interactive. Hence, the non-interactive and mediated communication, which is relatively new if compared to the history of human culture, is a real exception. Anyway, the mediated and non-interactive communication fostered an enormous expansion of human cognitive possibilities through the circulation of documents, written text, paintings, and then printings, books, journals, photographs, musical recordings, movies, videos, until the digital documents today. Mediated and non-interactive communication expands the power of symbols outside the personal, actual time space, limited present, and the local dimension, to an extent that today the human knowledge is increasingly based on it. But because interactive communication is more basic, humans have invented technologies to render interactive some form of mediated communication, bringing it back to the main realm of interactivity, both modifying their own communication forms and inventing new interactive media, like the web, the video games, the metaverses, and so on. Since the interactive communication can be more effective and engaging, some non-interactive media try to appear interactive with some tricks. The letters to the director in the newspapers, the presence of the public in the TV studios, the phone calls in TV and radio programs. Some reality shows even require an input from the viewers to modify the content and choose the participants. And finally, the interactive mediated communication can have a relevant impact on improving teaching and education. In this way, we can see that after 3 days, the people remember the communication, the kind of communication they interact with. And if we go lower, we see that the less senses are involved in the communication, and the less of this communication is remembered. So, interactivity and senses. Through symbols, humans developed their conscience, imagination, interiority, introspection, self-awareness. They created the conditions to transcend the physical constraints of the here and now and crafted parallel worlds from which mythologies, rites and religions were born. Thanks to symbols, humans developed in an almost hypertrophic way the ability in projecting, imaging and designing the future and the ways to live in the future. In fact, we live in the future. A relevant part of our thoughts, acts, activities, ideas, projects is aimed at the future. We keep let's do some examples. We keep agendas to tune our commitments with the future. We build monuments to project the memory towards the future. We make images with that particular modern form of monument that is photography to create plausible, virtual and to some extent independent doubles, some sort of cheap and short-lived monuments made of paper that populate the world's imagery and sometimes also its imagination. We trust the weather forecasting reports. Some people pay magicians and astrologers in order to have a glimpse of the future. Money is a kind of infinite promise. We put money in the banks to be safe in the future, and the banks invest our money in the future, although, as we know, often in a wrong way. We have insurances to protect us in the future, and some of them are mandatory. We make bets, invest money in the stock exchange market, risk and gamble. We buy goods on credit or using installment plans. Some firms accomplish the only task of predicting the future and selling it to other companies, which in turn put the future in their industrial plans. The very etymology of the word project is from Latin and means to throw beyond. Beyond what? Certainly beyond the difficulties that all the projects must go through before becoming real, but especially beyond time. Sometimes I ask my students, are you here for the past, for the present, or for the future? Evidently, you think that from your courses you can acquire knowledge that will be useful in your future life, that fits with your attitudes and projects, and you pay money for it. And, of course, also the teacher should be bothered by the future, and should have a strong motivation for transmitting their knowledge, because when they are old and retired, the students will be the pilots of the society they will be living in. And what is the meaning of hope? A typical human construct, and also one of the tributaries of the Christian theology, if not believing in the future with emerging facts and opportunities that fits with our desires. And you that are all in front of me are here for the future. Humans probably are the first species on earth that are aware of time. They try to understand and question time, and they pray to be ready for the future. The future must catch them prepared, although it is a very difficult gamble. Humans wish to control, multiply, and even subvert the future, also beyond their biological chances and capabilities. They try doing this in their first life, the biological life. improving the life conditions, the ways to contrast illnesses, diseases and injuries with more and more sophisticated technologies and tools. In the so-called First World, this process led to an increase of the average lifespan. Among the Neanderthalians, only 4 adults every 10 and more than 30 years, and the average lifespan expectation was between 15 and 30 years. 30 years was the Greeks and Romans' lifespan expectation, while at the end of the 19th century it was 40 years. Today, in roughly 1 century, acceleration, speed, the lifespan expectation has almost doubled. But humans expanded their life also in a sort of second life, not to be confused with the famous metaverse, a life in the symbolic dimension. Through the media and the new media, the symbolic life grew from a local narrow dimension to a planetary scale habitat. Let's try this bizarre calculation together. Let's sum up the time we spend in a day to speaking and chatting, to phoning, to writing, to using the computer and its tools, to reading newspapers and books, to watching television, cinema, art exhibitions, graffiti, signals, indications, physical and life sign and banners, dashboards, screens and supports, to attending theatre, presentation, and music events. If we sum up all this time, it is a relevant part of our time, and more, it is in this symbolic habitat, or through it, that we take many of the most important decisions of our life. Since humanity began using symbolic communication, the environment has become a hybrid where the real and the virtual, the symbolic, interpenetrate and cohabit, a hybrid space that can be experienced both physically and symbolically. The symbolic infosphere built by the digital media is an extension of the world we know, which is real as the real world. The life in the symbols has deeply transformed the idea of identity, for instance, which has become a contextual, multifaceted and virtualized notion, defined by the environment where the subject lives in or frequents. The symbolic habitat is fragmented into many environments and can be very different and not necessarily interconnected, so that the subject can assume many identities. This process, fostered by the electronic media, has been emphasized by the networks of the telematic media that render irrelevant the physical spatial position of the inhabitants of the symbolic habitats, which can be socially experienced in real time. There are many instruments and tools that allow people to deal and interact with the symbolic environments. For instance, of course, maps, initially maps, charts and plans allow to symbolically know, describe and interpret the world in increasingly powerful and refined ways thanks to the technologies. Today we are able to build very particular maps, like this one. This map, this is the work of Edith Fisher, and all these data are taken from a city, in this case it is London, and the three colors show people that have put photographs in Flickr and Picasa, and they took photographs and they are divided in local people. Red, the red is for the tourist people, and yellow for the color yellow is for people that whose locality is under charging. There are many maps of this kind, but more we can exceed the geography of the Earth, and for instance, with the Planck telescope. Make the first map of the full sky of the continent. And in this map we can see also a lot of other information that we can see, we are not allowed to see with the naked eyes. or we can also express theories about the world. For instance, the superstring theory can be has been represented in some way, in some occurrence, by this kind of we can call map. Today, thousands of maps can symbolically represent the internet growth, like this one that maybe you know. It is very interesting because it contains all the data, the relevant data, of course, of the internet evolution, or can represent the brain activity. In this case, it is a work, a recent work by Alexander Schaffer. And these are works that are targeted to improve the techniques in our sciences, or still in the realm of the brain activity. This map, we can do the other maps also about the distribution of cancer and viruses. In particular, this map has been made by Cassius at the MIT, and it collected that sign to the cancer, to patient with cancer. There are maps about the social diseases, giving at a glance the idea, the dimensions, evolution of brain phenomena. In informatics and telematics, the evolution of the human-computer interfaces, their multiplication and the development of interface design theories allow to enter and to interact with the symbolic digital habitats from the physical world, using increasingly simple and natural ways that involve the body's intelligence and the senses. In the augmented reality, a further symbolic layer of data is superimposed to a picture of the physical world, mixing reality and information. In this case, I try to set the different kind of computer or digital devices interfaces from the birth of graphical user interfaces, GUI, and the birth of many types of interfaces like virtual reality interfaces, the interfaces that start other interfaces that went out from the video games console like Kinect and Wii, that will become very interesting in the future not only in the game realm. Multi-touch interfaces like the interfaces of smartphone and tablets. Physical interfaces, there are some devices that require the touch in a very huge way than on tablets and on the smartphone. And the brain interface that is as a type interface is based on the activity of the brain that can be in some way read, simply read, and transferred to interaction. While with the Internet of Things, the Internet of Things is the next big thing in the Internet. Every object that will be built by humans will have an IP number, and will be able to set this position and in some way to exchange information with the other objects. And in this graph, it is the phase for the Internet of Things. All human-made objects are connected. Distribution, the devices are everywhere. The net, the form of the net is the cloud. The actions are connect, exchange information, and control the artificial environment everywhere. We will be able, with the Internet of Things, to control all what we humans do. And it will connect everything. While the humans will soon be able to monitor the whole artificial environment and reduce it into symbols again, since all the objects will have an IP number and will be able to connect, exchange information, and adapt to the environment. With the Internet of Things, all the artificial dimension, that is, that increasingly pervasive and extended material dimension created by humankind that we could call a second nature will be interconnected. But of course, there will be some more. This process will go beyond, of course. The activity of checking, controlling and managing the environment is totally natural for the animals, and it is for humans too, although through different technologies. The Internet of Things will lead to interconnection of the artificial and the natural environments, pervading them by data flows, in touch each other and interoperating in an intimate way. There are already many applications. For instance, the system to monitor the earthquakes and the volcanoes, to forecast the weather, to control the climate change, to guard the animals' migrations and the extinction of the species. The Internet of Everything will display the collaboration and the merge of digital, optical, bio and nanotechnologies. The symbolic dimension is an increasingly autonomous universe, constantly expanding and restructuring. It is mainly based on the simulation, and in the process of simulation is probably at the core of evolution. This universe of simulation can mix up and often totally substitute what it is called the real world. The artifacts and machines that humans have invented stem from the use of symbolic intelligence, and often, such as in the case of artificial intelligence, they come from an attempt to simulate or emulate it. What humans call technology is indeed their destiny, their peculiarity, their attitude. The very symbolic ability is a technology, and the many languages, media, projects, devices, machines are the tools. Technologies grew on the human biology, since they derive from the symbolic ability that emerged and is inseparable from the body. Today, technologies are intimately part of the human biology. They are merging with it, or humans can start giving birth to new sorts of creatures beyond themselves. The living is the best model to simulate in making tools, machines, artifacts, devices, organisms, entities which must survive damages, errors, defects, viruses, and autonomously work in and adapt to many environments, which have to interact with unexpected situations and hitches, like the living normally does. The living is the best model because it has demonstrated its efficiency in the last 4 billion years of evolution. It already knows those problems because it has embodied them since the dawn of its evolution. The best strategy is inscribed in the organization, behaviors and strategies of the living because it has already experience of the world. Sometimes certain complex behaviors of the living organisms may spontaneously emerge in robotics, artificial life, synthetic biology, showing a third line in evolution. In the near future, the human life and culture will expand and also beyond the biological limits through the third life, the life that humans are giving to the entities built by their culture. Through the symbolic dimension, humans developed a wide range of extensions to the brain, senses and body, tools, artifacts, machines, bio-entities, which are quickly becoming more powerful, complex, automatic, autonomous and self-sufficient. These entities and organisms, also inspired by the biosciences and the biodynamics, are growing smart and independent from control, so they could be defined to a certain extent as living entities, in a process that will be more evident and differentiated in the future. Humans are thus the godfathers of this new, wholly natural genesis. There are many emerging growing fields: autonomous agents and artificial life forms, autonomous objects, robotics and biorobotics, nanoentities, hybrids, organic, inorganic, modified or expanded organisms, synthetic life. This growth and multiplicity will take place in a realm where connecting, collecting, communicating and sharing information can be easily and automatically achieved thanks to the computer technologies and the net. Could this also be considered as an evolutionary leap accomplished by nature, as a step forward in evolution? I think this can be an interesting and an urgent question to answer to. Thank you for your attention and patience for my reading in English. Is there a question? I'm here.
Can you say, congratulate you, it's excellent what you explained today. I have also some question about, you mentioned so many things which are important for, let's say, the next step in our lives, and you stick on language, which is crucial for all kinds of dimensions we are dealing with. And I think, and so I'm asking you what you think. The interaction you mentioned as the best way to remember whatever, or to learn, or to develop. And do you agree with this, let's say, projection that we can make today a robot which can make us of this artificial world, let's say, this interactive experience? So the learning could be just different kind of learning in the future, in the near future, I see. And you see it also like this, because the language, oral, and also the symbolic, it means it's connected on the second dimension. So the language is, or also our thinking is based on some kind of singularity. So we can imagine whatever. But when we see it, the picture is already illusion, but it's based on, let's say, linguistics also, and grammar. But I think that this kind of grammar is not developed yet so far than, let's say, oral grammatic or linguistic. But what do you think about this three-dimensional possibility today? Because we have also 3D scanner, 3D printer, and we can deal with objects. And the objects, it means direct relation to experience and interaction. That's my question. We are just in the time of developing these tools and this. What do you think about this, let's say, dimensions and language, 1, 2, 3 dimensional?
Yeah. Well, yes, I may expand my discourse from the symbolic ability. And for me, the symbolic ability is the ground where everything started. And as to the question of education, as to interactivity, it is proven that, I have seen that graph, it is proven that we tend to remember more information when we interact with the information. So, it means in some way that there is something that is deeper, some dimension that is deeper. I think that we should see both the symbolic dimension and the body dimension going together. We want to live with the body inside the symbolic. And the symbolic can help to build something that can be managed by the body. And I will go to the 3D printing, that is a very interesting topic. For instance, all the interface, all the computer interfaces go to the direction, towards the direction of involving the body. Involving the body and more senses. This is very interesting because it means that in operating in symbols, because all these devices are symbolic devices. They can see, they can show us text, images, sound, and so on. So we can operate with the body in the symbols, and through the symbols we can manipulate the symbol. Because the body is at the basis of our history. The body is the basis of the language. The language and the symbols comes up from the body. And it is proven that also when a professor is speaking his lessons, if he or she in some way makes with the hands, it is easier for the student to understand. And also in disciplines like physics, low and high, we tend to speak with the body. And this kind of communication is very important, it's best. And it is the first communication that we learn, the baby that interact with the world. It is very interesting. I can remember a very important robotic scientist that once wrote, we are able to build computers that can play chess or solve theorems roughly like humans do. But we are not able to build robots that can mount and avoid the obstacles, or that are keep manipulating reality. It's much more difficult. It's much more difficult. And he gave, Hans Mohr, it is a very important scientist, he gave an answer to this. He said, well, the symbolic ability is relatively recent, from 4,000 to 2 million years ago. So it is relatively recent. But all the abilities, all the body-based abilities are much older than this. So we are able to simulate in the machines. They are much easier to simulate the symbols, the use of symbols, than the body's related techniques. And what we are doing is accompanying, developing our way to manipulate symbols with hands, with the body, with our physical dimension. As to the 3D printing, it is an example of this. I think that the 3D printing will be a revolution in the future. Let's think a very simple example. I break one part of these glasses. Okay, so now I have to go to the optic and leave my glasses, and we have to buoy and give me the part and mount the part. With the 3D printing, I will be able to download the file of the glasses and then print by myself the parts slightly with the material. So there will be a totally different. It means a totally different economy in the future. And again, we use a symbolic ability, the file, the computer, to build something which is physical. But it will be and maybe you know, there was recently a speech in the United States. They printed with special printing machine based on nanotechnologies some organs of the humans. Organs, body organs.
Just maybe months ago it was a conference in Maribor which exposed this question about the printing organic. It was a conference and it was one Chinese scientist. I personally talked with her, and she made already 3D print of liver, small livers, and she put them in the mouse, and this mouse is living. So today we have many examples already, because this organic, let's say, cells and some material which support this is possible to do. And I think that also in this exhibition we saw in the frame of this exhibition in outside of Maribor, we saw some examples of this organic 3D printing. So that is already existent in the world. So I don't think that it's not a far way that we will reproduce our organs, or let's say to change them, or
by ourselves.
From ourselves. So it's already here. But what I want to ask you also, because you had a correlation with, let's say, how long people lived in the past and now. But you don't think that what is, let's say, physical, 1 year to live 10 years or 30 years, today we live already 70, 80 years. We achieve this oldest. But if you live in Milan or in New York, one day, it means so intensive that you have so many informations that one in, let's say, 1,000 years ago doesn't get in whole life. So what is now this relation? Yes. We live already towards these people from 1,000 years ago. Let's say our life is much longer. The 1 year is not, let's say, the measurement. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember a phrase from Umberto Eco. Once he said that maybe a people, an attendant of an hotel has much more information than an expert, for instance, in the Renaissance. Well, my consideration was only in some way, we can say, mechanical, the real, not about all the information in that year. I think that, as you said, that today we have a lot of information. We have a very that it is very aggressive. I see with my students, with my son too. Anyway, when I consider the average, the life in the ages, I consider just the length of the year.
Yeah, but that's not. That's let's say not objective. That's relative longness of the life.
Yes, maybe from an information viewpoint, maybe yes. But I don't think that we would exchange this. We would live less and with more information.
I have another question. You differentiated between the realistic world and symbolic world. What kind of? I don't know if you make plans. Do you think this is symbolic world, or is this perhaps some kind of imaginary world? And is there a difference between imaginary and symbolic? And if we would,
Please.
And if we then think about symbolic lives, I think this is kind of a satisfactory substitute for real life. How do you see these differences?
Yeah, maybe I have not been so clear. The symbolic reality and the real reality, also symbolic reality is real reality. For instance, I said that inside Facebook, for instance, we can take many decisions that are crucial for our life. So it is real, but it is a different kind of real. And it is precisely this different kind of real that we added with the symbols. We can live in another dimension. In some way it is a little bit so. I think that all these came it was through the symbolic dimension. The symbolic dimension brought something new, new ways. All the ideas of being, of living, of the consciousness, the self-awareness came from that. And the first time that our ancestors start asking who I am, where do I come from, and then immediately realizes that they have to die. And only this awareness is present only in some superior primates, like the chimp and the gorilla too. They in some way understand that they will die. And in the moment that they think that they will die, and when the anthropologists discover some kind of tone of where some people that have been buried, it means that that culture has the symbolic ability. It is automatic, this passage. And the future becomes the dimension. And so again, okay, my last goal is to die, but I can't die. There must be some kind of another life. There must be some kind of different lives that I can live in. I can live in this other life if I believe in some kind of paradise or other situation. And it is an awareness that is typical of all the cultures, from the ancient cultures, from the Egyptian culture, the Roman culture, the Greek culture. They thought that there was some kind of, that life did not finish there. Of course, they imagined that there was some kind of other life. In a more realistic and we can say agnostic way, we can say that we still go on living. For instance, in the books that we write, in the photographs that we live, in some traces, symbolic traces that remain of us.
Well, my thoughts are that living beings are communicating because it brings benefit, better survival. Let's say single-cell organisms, since they do a sexual way of multiplication, they have to communicate because of, let's say, defense, better protection, let's say, speech, communicate between, they go all in the same direction when, let's say, a shark attacks, because one do as the other do. Higher populations of more developed vertebrates, they communicate basically within populations. Within populations.
Yes.
Because that's basically a definition of population. populations are normally limited because of difficulties in communication. Let's say big herds are not population like in Masai Mara, where they migrate millions of zebras. They don't communicate, and wildebeest, and that they are not populations. The humans are the only living beings, to my knowledge, that communicate on the level of the species. But that is maybe 100 years or maybe 50 years of the way of communication on the level of species. We are the only one who brought the communication from the population level to the level of species. Of course, there are some species which are dying off, and they are competing individuals. They can communicate, but the viable species, they can't communicate. And to me, the problem is what to communicate on the level of the species. Because if we consider that we communicate for our benefit, we didn't learn to communicate on the level of the species. Because now we don't find words how to save the planet in the final conclusion. Because, for example, you know, there were these conferences about the climate change. No way of to get they can talk, but they can't communicate. And that's the biggest problem I see in communication. Of course, all the technology follows or allows the communication because we want it brings benefit. Since we were single-celled organism, this is to me very logical. It is bring step, another step, another step, another step in advancing to benefit. But we reached the situation where we simply don't have answers. Very simple. We don't have the answers. We don't have the tools. We don't have. We can't communicate it out. What is your opinion about that?
Well, when you say we can't communicate out, what do you mean exactly? We can't communicate with whom?
We tried a lot of time to make a kind of decisions on a world scale. To me, as a biologist, it's on the scale of species. But more or less, you know, there are no good. I feel like communication stops, it decreases. It is. We talk, but we don't really.
Yes,
we don't find a solution. We don't make a step forward.
Yeah.
We are at the limit. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. Well, I think that we should agree about the meaning of communication. Maybe what you mean is but I think that I understood. Well, you say we are not able to agree in some way and set up, for instance, in the environmental field, to set up some kind of strategy to survive, or to live, or to go on living, or to get in touch with the other species.
Isn't that very important? I mean, the basic. I go back to be more understandable to my first thoughts. We do communication to get a benefit, to better survive.
Yeah. Well, in some way, I think that we should maybe see what you say from another perspective. I think that we are one of the few species in the Earth that have developed and have had a huge multiplication. In roughly decades, we passed from 3 billions to 5 billions. So, in some way, if we would be some kind of scientist, we could say this is a species that has a very good health, because it multiplies so quickly. The problem is that multiplying so quickly means that we are subtracting resources to the other animals, to the nature that we are living in. This is the problem. And I think it is a problem that we are finally aware of. I don't know if we will solve this problem. I don't know. Because there are a lot of, as we know, different viewpoints from nations and so on. What I want to stress is a position that in some way is unpopular. So, for instance, I think that all the institutions and the activities that deal with the health of the environment have mainly the object of an environment for humans. An environment for humans, especially. And this is the problem. And I know that it is a very unpopular position, but it is so. When we say that we have to defend nature and we have to defend the other animals, and we should stop the diminishing of the species, we are always reasoning with a perspective which is profoundly human, because we say that if that animals die, we die. If that nature dies, we die. But maybe it is not so, and there are some people that wrote books, James Lovelock, for instance, in Asia. There's like a unique living system. So maybe, and recently in Scientific American there was an article, very curious, about a scientist that imagines the Earth without man. It could be. And we, for instance, I remember in Italy sometimes there are some unexpected accidents. For instance, last summer a man was killed by a shark. A shark is a very rare fish in the Mediterranean. And I remember the titles of the journals. The monster has killed a man. So let's kill and we always forget that it was the shark that it was in his natural environment and not the man. We like nature, but nature has to be in an angle and has to be controlled, has to be. But nature is not this. Nature is uncontrolled. Nature is unpredictable. Nature is violent. I think that we should get in touch with this. And I think that we have to do early. I don't know if I answered your question, but maybe I enlarged it too much.
I have many questions. I have many questions and points in several hours, but the first one I want to say is related to what both of these gentlemen said. You were showing the speed of communication. And you showed a letter, written letter, handwritten letter. And then we compare this with email. Now, have you read books from the 19th century? And they speak of the letter, the perfumed letter. The letter with the tremulous, scratchy writing of the grandfather. Now, you're measuring, you're comparing apples and oranges, I think, because in the handwritten letter, you have far, far more information physically embodied in the medium of the message. You have the material. Did they buy it? Did they steal it? Does it smell? Was it rained on the way there? The touch of it, the way it was it written hurriedly? Does it slant down in despair? Does it slant up in happiness? And we try to emulate these things with on the internet forums, the smiley face and things like this. But for all the speed, we have lost tremendous amount of information in communication. I remember one of my grandmothers was born in the 19th century, and my other great-grandmother was also born in the 19th century. And they wrote, like in that picture, beautifully. It was beautiful to look at. They were trained to write. I think you're comparing, when we talk about information, what is the quality of the information? And this relates to what you were saying about communication. Sure, we can talk. We can talk now. We can talk to anyone in the world now, right now, 5 seconds later. You know? But how much is really? Yes, this. Look, just looking at this, it's rich with information. I don't understand a damn word.
This image just for this reason. For this reason, because I think that in any process, in any changing process, there is always something that we gain, and there is always something that we lose. And the problem is to consider what we gain and what we lose. You made a statement of passion. You are involved in this. I can feel it. My viewpoint here is to be the most scientific, as scientific as possible, because I did not express any preference. I can say this is better or not. I can see what it's happening. And for me too, this means that we are losing that. But anyway, the problem, it seems that from the emerging of the symbolic ability, the humankind tries to communicate more and more quickly, more and more in distance. And so new tools are born and something is left. But maybe that it is, you are right when you say the paper, the smell, it is an experience that's wonderful. And I think that we never lose the books. Many people say all the digital tools will substitute the book. I don't think so. Because reading a book and taking a book, touching it and reading a book is a unique experience. But we will lose some forms of writings. One is a letter. Because this letter, because this letter is beautiful and there is a lot of passion in this science. There is the soul of the person. Every one of us has a different way of writing, because every one of us is represented by the way of writing. My writing and your writing is some kind of identity, of your identity. And in fact, in the tribunals, there are the calligraphers, the experts that, like in photography, that say this is the person can recognize so it is like an identity card. It is very important. But I think that in this application it is risky to be lost, because these letters are slow, in a society that needs to be very quick and exchange information very quickly.
I agree with you. That's a materialized classical information, but it's not on the way of communication, because somebody who written the letter, put it in the bottle and throw it in the sea. Who will communicate with it? So nowadays we are more close to this direct communication. What you mentioned, very important, is that you are in correlation. And nowadays, let's say the development of internet and all this stuff are on, let's say, spiritual level, I think. That maybe in later on, this development is going on this direction, that we will again achieve this materialized information, but in communication, direct communication. And that is my appointment with the previous, that we are now in a kind of process of developing 3D technology, and this 3D technology would gives us opportunity to, again, on the end, to feel it, to smell it, all these things. But nowadays, it's too early to talk about. But we know what we have to achieve.
Yeah.
But the intensity of information nowadays is really pretty high towards the letters which was written 500 years ago. So for such a letter, somebody took whole day, and that was his, let's say, really emotions, and he put it in a letter. But this letter traveled then months to the target.
Yes.
and what was the let's say, experience with such a letter? That's whole few days and expecting all these things. So it's pretty much on one letter. Now today we communicate and interact, and we finish maybe too quick some, let's say, communication. And so our life is also much intenser. So in 1 year, I said before, but I didn't express myself quite well, that maybe we live already now 1,000 years against somebody who lived 1,000 years ago. So our intensity of receiving informations to let's solve them and to understand them, it's much higher than ever. And I don't know what is capability of the humans to process this information. That's the main question, actually. Where is the barrier? Which
we are overwhelmed by information, so we should try a way to go through all this information. Yes, I would add to what you said, that not only we have a lot more information than in the past, but through the media we can live other lives. For instance, when we go to the cinema, for me, it has a very important cognitive issue, because we see situations that are very different from our situations, and in some way we see how this situation evolves. We learn from cinema. We learn from how the people get in touch, what are their adventures. We learn from others, and we learn remaining safe in our social. Yeah. And the same is for the other media. The same is for many others media. Yes, we are losing maybe with materiality, and with the 3D printers we can get back some more matter. It's very important thing that we are body-based. It is our limit. It is not a limit, of course. It is a pleasure for us, but we can say that we can go further our body. Yes, maybe something we are going to lose like this, but maybe with potential. Yeah. Anyway, we can have many new things, because we should see also what we gain, not only what we lose. For instance, well, I say to my students that only 10 years ago, they could not communicate audiovisual information in real time. Today I can use Skype, and with Skype I can speak and discuss and communicate in real time audiovisual content with someone that is in Australia or in the United States. And only 10 years ago, only the television companies could do this. It was much more expensive, and it was not we could not use it. And so we lose something, but we gain something else.
Yeah, we are now in the age of two-dimensional communication, so picture communication. But the linguistics of the picture is not yet developed as, let's say, word linguistical grammatic is developed, let's say, hundreds of years. This picture has a tool for reproduction, that's a computer. The printing machine, which was invented in 1500, the Gutenberg printing machine, was the tool to reproduce the word, to support the linguistics and grammatics. And now we are in the process of development of two-dimensional communication. So I think that here is a lot to do still, no? And on the way is already three-dimensional communication. So we are in the process, and we don't understand what will come afterwards. So, but I can imagine.
I think that you are right. This is a direction, a very interesting direction. Not only in the material field, but if you consider that many communication tools are 3D based, for instance, all the video games, all the mass generation, movies, publicity, videos.
But it's fake 3D, no?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is based on the Renaissance.
Really 3D is touch.
You need 3D that you can touch.
But the picture is always functional as illusion. The picture is always illusion. But this field, the film is working for video. So. But it's very good because you can imagine how it looks something. You can imagine, but you don't know how big it is or whatever, how it smells.
Unfortunately, we cannot exchange the smell in distance.
Not yet.
Not yet. I don't know if it would be possible one day, but anyway, we decided to communicate more quickly and more, as I said before, more quickly and in distance in change for a poorer communication, because we only communicated through the sight and the hearing, two senses. Only these two.
I think maybe we should continue more informally now. Have some wine and
yes.
I
know that I have been in a very interesting zone for a while.
Yes.
When I was young, I made one with my father. So.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you so much.